friends, welcome back to the Messed Up Movies Podcast, a podcast celebrating movies and filmmakers that embrace the unhinged, the insane, the outrageous, the off-kilter, and the all-around kind of messed up fun you can't take your eyes off of. I'm your host, Griffey, here for this addition to our sweaty madman, right? March Madness, sweaty madman. That's what we're all about this month. This movie's definitely sweaty and has a madman. Joined as always by my friend, co-host, and man who just keeps asking me if I can see.
Oh, yeah, that's Alex Dandino for sure.
Do you see?
Do you see? Well, no,
all
sorry,
right, guys.
That's the Ray Fiennes one. This is Do You See?
Yeah, this is a lot more understated than the Ray Fiennes one, as we will discuss. Real quick business before we go. Subscribe to the the Misfit Parade. Subscribe to the Misfit Parade YouTube, Messed Up Movies Podcast Patreon. Lots of fun stuff over there. The Black Mirror miniseries is in full swing. Patreon exclusives. We would love to have you join us over there. Best way to support the show. 5-star ratings and reviews. We're on all the socials you're on. Get over there. Follow that. More importantly, let a friend know what we're doing here. Send this episode to a friend who likes manhunters or serial killers or tons of overacting, and we'll take it from there. All right. We are here, the Sweaty Madman we're adding to our collection for this March Madness curation. The Red Dragon, the Tooth Fairy, even one Hannibal Lecter. Not as sweaty, but still definitely a madman. We are talking about the 1986 classic Michael Mann's Manhunter. Alex, would you like to start us off with the pertinent information? A dossier, if you will.
Yes, let me take out all my inappropriate items on an airplane in front of children.
Yeah, right next to a kid.
Right next to a kid who's just trying to mind their own business.
Yeah. Do we not think that she boarded before he passed out from anxiety? Because that feels like a fucking lame move.
William Petersen, you got some splaining to do. Yes, Manhunter is a 1986 American thriller based on the novel Red Dragon by Thomas Harris. You might know it best as being I believe it's the first book in the series of books that encounter Hannibal Lecter. You've seen this before. This was remade again in, I believe, I can't remember what the year was, but it was directed by Brett Ratner, and it was called Red Dragon.
Was 2002.
Thank you. 2002, Red Dragon. That one is the version that has the Hannibal Lecter we all know and love, of course. This cast stars William Petersen as Will Graham. Will Graham's been played by now, probably most famously Hugh Dancy in the Hannibal series, and then Edward Norton in Red Dragon. Dennis Farina is Jack Crawford, who...
Fucking love Dennis Farina. Anytime I get some Farina, sign me up.
Tom Noonan is Francis Dollarhide, who was Ray Fiennes in the Red Dragon film, and Brian Cox, the youngest we've ever seen Brian Cox, I think, in anything. I believe right after this, he became the character he is in Succession immediately. Like, the movie ended and his hair went
He's like, ooh, he tried on that Hannibal Lecter skate. He's like, I like ye.
He became a billion years old right after that. No, Brian Cox as Hannibal Lecter. And I believe, and he's the first on-screen characterization of Hannibal Lecter before Anthony Hopkins did the thing. So.
Yeah, and directed by Michael Mann, him of Miami Vice fame.
Most famously directed by Michael Mann.
Yeah, he has gone on to be a massive director, right? I wanted to start here. So this is essentially our first look at the Lecter Verse, right? Obviously, Silence of the Lambs went on to win Best Picture. Anthony Hopkins solidified Dr. Hannibal Lecter as one of the greatest fucking serial killer monsters ever to grace the screen. I do think all the movies are a little different, though, right? Because I kind of think this, Red Dragon, Manhunter, Silence of the Lambs, right? That's kind of the three that feel the same. Hannibal feels like a weird deviation and offshoot.
Hannibal, again, this is actually... Okay, I'm going to say this. This is a little bit off topic, but I'm going to... all Ridley Scott sequels to his most popular films or other popular films, because Ridley Scott directed Hannibal, which is technically the sequel to Silence of the Lambs. All sequels directed by Ridley Scott feel like not that he's half-assing it, but that he just refuses to read the script. He's
yeah,
like,
he's whole-assing his way to a paycheck, but but Hannibal's the one that feels like it's oversaturating the horror movie stuff. Sure. You get the blood and gut scene, right, where they dump the guy over the edge of that fancy museum and his intestines fall out. The eating the brain. We got Fire Marshal Bill, right in the middle of it. So that movie feels like it's taking what I think this series does best. And a lot of people, like when the Silence of the Lamb won Best Picture, like, it's not a fucking horror movie, because that would be unfathomable if a fucking horror movie could, win an Oscar.
Sure.
That's a fucking horror movie. That's about a guy who makes skin suit out of plump women. Right, and puts lotions in baskets, and that movie's fucking terrifying, right?
Yeah.
Neither here nor there. I think what they do at their best, right, is it's really just this brilliant kind of like FBI cop procedural, right, where we're kind of cracking the investigation with them. That has these monsters as the target and flavor, but they're much more background, right? Hannibal kind of eschews that equation. Sure. So I think it's funny to look at them, though, because this is the one. Silence of the Lamb clearly is the one that got it perfect.
Sure. I
think the more battle is like, do you prefer this or Red Dragon? What I like about this one, despite kind of the Michael Mann-isms of it, right? The hyper stylized saturated lights in some scenes, and then the no lighting fluorescence in a lot of the others. Yeah. Right? There's just like these lighting cues that are just like really emotional tags.
I would go with
the heavy ass needle drops. Michael Mann-isms, right? All that said, I still think this is the most workman-like. And I think the reason I like this one better than Red Dragon, Ray Fiennes and Edward Norton feel like movie stars playing these characters. This feels so much more real and gritty to me, right? And for the first time being in this world, these feel like Farina just feels like a guy who would have that job, right? Yeah. Lowndes feels like a guy who would have that job. Even, what's our name? William Petersen, overacting aside, feels like just a dad who's like, you left the lights on, didn't you son of a bitch? Right? You left the door open and the AC's on, you son of a bitch. What are we, cooling the whole neighborhood? Yeah. Like, he feels... This to me, the thesis for this one is it's the most workman-like Lecter Verse movie, and I think that's a great asset of the film. What do you think of that?
I mean, I think it's a first attempt at something that's so... I've never read the Thomas Harris novels. Like, it's just not my... they've always...
I actually can't believe I haven't gotten to those, but...
for me, they just feel like airport books, and I'm just like, God, that's just not sort of my thing. And that's fine. Like, I don't give a shit if that's...
Your layover in Denver, your uncle's going to be like, you're never going to believe what just happened in my mass market paperback.
And I'd be like, I bet I will. I think that workmanlike is an interesting way of putting it. I think the stylization is probably the thing that's most the Manhunter of it all is so... It's the unmotivated lighting is like really specific. Like, there's things that I'm just like, why would anyone have that light in their house? Why would anyone have that light there? Why would
it worked in Miami Vice? Why change things up, right?
Like, I think this is the kind of fun thing about Michael Mann as a director. Is Michael Mann, like, look, this was probably... I don't know where this was in Michael Mann's oeuvre, but like this was not a well-received movie, by the way, when it came out. Only now, I think what's kind of funny is we look at it now after Red Dragon came out. And by the way, Red Dragon's not a shitty movie. It's just not as good.
I enjoy Red Dragon. I just like this one so much
But
better.
I think it's funny because like this movie was not well-received when it came out, and I do think it took literally 2 decades. Like, it took till the other Red Dragon came out for people like, it wasn't bad.
So listen to this run here, just to give you a little clue, right? So we got a lot of kind of shorts. We've got TV series, Policewoman, right?
The Thief. Kind of Thief,
So here it is. Thief, which is fucking beloved.
Awesome.
The Keep, which we love. We talked with Brian and Blake Salisbury from Junk Food Cinema about that. And then Manhunter. So that is a 3-movie run for the ages.
I knew it was pretty early. Okay, so for one, Farina...
81 was Thief. This was 5 years later.
Right.
After that.
So so this is actually a really fun thing that I love about like Dennis Farina particularly is Farina was a cop, like a Chicago cop.
Dude, you can tell.
For his entire career. Because like his authenticity as a police officer, especially in this one, I think, because you could just do. And by the way, I have no problem with like Lawrence Fishburne or Scott Glenn being Jack Crawford. Those guys are great. Even Harvey Keitel, like they're very good actors. But that they know how to do that thing. Like Lawrence Fishburne particularly, that's just a different thing altogether. What's fun about Dennis Farina is the understated performance. I think in comparison to William Petersen doing Will Graham, who, is just like...
with that Italian swag mixed in, like that's what I mean. He is my example of this movie.
The workman,
feels like
that's
a
the
real
workman.
guy.
That's
Yes.
the workman aesthetic. Like everyone around him, even the side characters, like when they're doing when they're doing that rapid research to find out.
The toilet paper message. Love that scene.
Great sequence. But like all that stuff in there, that feels very real. I think what's interesting about like the William Petersen performance, and I texted you about this. He's just, there's a lot of acting going on. I don't know if that necessarily has to do with the way the script's written or the way he interprets the character in general, but we've seen other versions of Will Graham now that works in. This one is obviously the first go around, and it's the 80s. And again, we're still not fully up on serial killer stuff because it's still the 80s. Like we don't,
we had a boom in the 70s, so like I don't think we knew about what the FBI process was.
Yeah, we're basically at Zodiac at this point. Like is probably the most famous one. I mean, we haven't gotten to Dahmer, and Dahmer is probably the thing that's the most terrifying. So I think that maybe we have. I don't remember. But I do think Farina, like the actual business of being a police officer and an FBI agent in this movie is, I think, the most interesting thing about the movie. Is it feels very real. I think that all the Michael Mann-isms, particularly, they hit for me. Like you get to see the I don't know if you noticed this, the change in media on when Chilton, the scene where Chilton is they find the toilet paper. When it comes to Chilton's office, it's videotape, which is bizarre to me. Like, but again, like, there's the first like instance of this Michael Mann thing where he's gonna play around with your aesthetic and what you're seeing versus what you're feeling. Like, I don't know. It's a really fun, like, grand experiment, I think, in terms of filmmaking, especially for something that comes from like it comes as an adaptation. There's so much style put into something that's essentially that's an adaptation. You kind of don't normally expect that. So I don't know. I liked it though.
Even moments like there are scenes with the Tooth Fairy that have like these big grandiose like music video feels. Yeah. But when we first see him, compare like the first like Do You See scene to what Ralph Fiennes is doing. Tom Noonan just looks like some fucking dipshit deranged guy who has like a pantyhose on his face and a bad shirt. Ralph Fiennes looks like a fucking, he's doing horror movie monster shit.
Yeah.
And I think
doing a presentation.
That's like the comparative scenes I would use to like why I think this one is so interesting to me. So let's we're going to go through this movie bit by bit, right? The synopsis is essentially Will Graham has retired, right? He's too stressed out. He got attacked by Lecter, this other one. And it's a little bit of a struggle, right? FBI shows up, like, we need help. He's on a lunar cycle. We got to get this motherfucker. He just killed his family. And Will Graham is doing the, like, all right, I'll come back, but not much. And then, of course, he gets sucked in because he's an empath, right? And he can't help himself. He's just like these guys, just with, like, a cooler shirt and saving turtles. That's the movie we're doing, right? We meet his past captured victim, Hannibal Lecter, is helping him. Not really, but, like, that's the theory, right? Get the scent. And then he's chasing down this guy, the Tooth Fairy, who really wants to be the Red Dragon, right? That's the movie. Serial killer kind of mash up, round him up. Let's start with Will Graham, right? We kind of have three characters we can use to dissect this film.
Yeah.
So Will Graham, in this movie, I do have to say, I think Will Graham, I don't think William Petersen is bad.
Who's your favorite Will Graham of the three that have been on screen? Who's your favorite?
It's tough, man, because I think
Hugh Dancy's a hard one because he gets more room with it.
He gets a lot more room, and he was playing he was more specific on the kind of social abnormalities of this, right? I think he had more run. I think it's hard to argue he's not the best, but he feels a little off to me at times, right?
If you
he
look
doesn't
at
feel
just
like
those episodes, because that's the end of the series. So if you look just at those episodes of the Red Dragon story,
Yeah.
within the Hannibal show. I do think that he does a really good job.
Yeah, I don't think you can argue he's the best of the three, right? Like, Edward Norton was great, but it felt a little phoned in to me. William Petersen just, he feels like more of you're casting like a butch FBI guy.
Yeah.
Right? Who's then trying to play like it's hard for me in public because I have these empathic emotional states that are hard. And so, like, him and Hugh Dancy are the complete opposite sides of the coin on that.
Well, this is
right
like,
where
so
he's like macho first, trying to play life is hard for me, and Hugh Dancy's like so fucking emo and broken, and then just like he's also a guy who happens to do FBI shit and chase these guys down. So I think Dancy's the best, clearly, but I don't mind William Petersen, especially for the time it makes sense casting. The thing is, there are just moments where the movie kind of sets Will Graham up in this, and it's a function of the form, right? Which is, how do we express that inner struggle, right? Whereas the Hannibal TV show said, we'll just do hyper stylized like fucking nightmarescapes and let him like really explore that in a more creative way than just, there is something about Will Graham just walking around being like, you touched her, didn't you, you son of a bitch? You fucking felt her tit, didn't you, you son of a bitch?
I legitimately...
And it's like, just talking the emotions out loud because we didn't know enough yet.
That one particularly, like, because Edward Norton does a similar thing in Red Dragon, which is fine. Like, I don't really care. I think it's when, and he does a lot of this. I don't like the way, like, I think this is my problem. This is like my main gripe with the way that Will Graham's written in this is Will Graham has such this like vindictiveness towards the character. I think that I do prefer the more empathetic version where he's someone who's just, because again, in the show, the thing that Hannibal Lecter always notes about Will Graham is like he is someone who has pure empathy. He can actually take like the side of a killer, as opposed to he's not scared to like touch that part of his psyche.
That's the key though, is that because in this show, I don't believe Will Graham is an empath. Like, as you watch it now,
I don't
having
either,
seen so many more of these kinds of shows and movies of guys tracking serial killers, you're like, it doesn't feel like he's getting in their head as much as just like walking the crime scene and being like, you son of a bitch.
Yeah.
You're just saying things that we know.
William Petersen's empathy is literally just like, you son of a bitch. I'm going to get this son of a bitch. I'm gonna
it
get
is like
this
one of those.
bastard.
It's like who says son of some bitch more, him or the fucking sheriff from Smokey and the Bandit? You son of a bitch.
I think I got up to 4 son of a bitches or bastards while he like talked about these guys walking.
Oh, it has to be a truckload.
What's going on? Like, so it's not empathy. You're just sitting there like angry that these guys got away with it. And I'm like, I get it. Hey man, nobody likes seeing people get murdered, but like you got to cool it on the, I'm going to get this son of a bitch. Like that's the part that I think gets a little too into like gumshoe procedural stuff and makes Will Graham less interesting. Graham
he's
becomes
more.
like
We didn't
way less
know
interesting because
Will Graham yet, right? This was just a cop. He's essentially playing a cop, who has like puppy dog sadness.
Well, he's also the other thing too is for Hugh Dancy and Edward Norton's versions, he is a lot less like trigger emotioned. Like when Freddie Lowndes walks over, he just immediately snaps, and I'm like, dude,
just hits him with that fucking full point judo throw.
You're
and I was like,
Jesus
who's
Christ,
paying for
fella?
that windshield, dude? You emotional fucking little.
I was like, you bitch,
Yeah!
dude, get your shit together.
Yeah, he's like, he took pictures of me. And it's like, well, yeah, that's not great, but
That's not great,
now
but, like-
some soccer mom's kid's gonna get impaled by a windshield, and
Some
someone's gonna have
soccer
to
mom's
track
kid's
you
gonna get
down.
impaled by a windshield, and also we now have to pay for it. Like, what's the matter with you? Like, can you just relax for 10
That's
seconds?
another thing. You do get a sweeping sense of like, damn, the FBI spends a shitload of money scrambling
lot.
choppers and jets to catch a guy.
A Learjet on standby. You're like, Jesus Christ. Do you have any idea how much that costs?
Yeah, they're pulling out all. It's a real lopsided fight between them and the serial.
It would have been really funny if they had at the end of the movie when they fly to St. Louis. It would have been really funny. Like, sorry, we got my phone shows me Amalfi Jets, which is like this private jet company. So I know this. But it would have been really funny if it got to that part and be like, oh, sorry, we have the duty ran out on the on the Learjet operators. We have to wait for new guys. Like, oh boy, that's gonna be rough.
Yeah.
Like,
This toilet paper's not going to inspect itself, motherfucker. No, again, I think there are moments. The movie starts to dabble and kind of sets the tone for things that we see later in other iterations. Like when Will Graham is walking in the room and he's like re-getting the scent, and the woman's there with the mirrors in her eyes, and she sits up, right? There are moments that they start to dabble on what could have been a better way to let us sink into what it's actually like. Because you're watching it and you are struck by the weight of this job, right? That everywhere you go, you're looking at these fucking horrific acts. You're trying to imagine a broken person who has a psyche that's hard to even comprehend. How are they thinking of this, right? And he's like, it's in your dreams, right? I love that kind of stuff. It's in your dreams. You were watching this. Oh, there's stuff like that works really, really well, right? And again, this one's the first one through the shoot, so it's not done as nuanced as some of the other versions. But I think he captured there's the scenes when he's on the boat, and it's just that super fucking the scenes that are really tight on just his face and eyes, and he's just watching his wife and the normal life he could have. But he's sinking further into this antisocial headspace. William Petersen sells the shit out of those moments, right? This balancing act between who he wants to be, the normal good guy who lives in a world, but also knowing that anywhere he goes, any shop, anywhere around the corner, these fucking things exist. Yeah. These fucking monsters. And I do think William Petersen sells that beautifully.
Yeah, I agree. I think like you said, it's the first one out the gate. I think what William Petersen does, it's a little overactory, and it's not but it's not bad. I think the other part of it too is in terms of I think the biggest thing you have to remember, and look, I know that there's not everyone who subscribes to the auteur theory, but Michael Mann is one of those guys who has a lot of control over the movies he makes. So for me, what I think is so fascinating is while we've seen other versions of this, the Will Graham from a Michael Mann movie, this is absolutely a Michael Mann. This is the version Michael Mann would be doing. Because, he can't just be this fucked up, empathic, sort of just very weird guy. He has to be a cop still.
It's also the 80s. We didn't want to see our cops as a Norman Bates with a badge. We wanted 80s. A fucking square jaw badass. It's mid-80s.
We want, we're still, we need a Sharky. We need we need a Burt Reynolds. And so, if William Petersen's going to be a profiler, he still has to be a badass. I think that's, the thing that we've sort of changed is now, Will Graham. I think that's the thing that Edward Norton and Hugh Dancy are not, is badasses. And that, makes them a more interesting character to watch. But that, I think, is the sort of, thing is William Petersen's conduit as Will Graham is not... He's the main character of the movie. He's not the most interesting character of the movie.
Not even a little. And again, Will Graham to me is never supposed to be the most interesting. He is our vehicle to be oh my God.
Yeah.
Look at all this unexplored real estate of the mind that we just thankfully, mercifully, will hopefully never come across. And that there are real fucking human monsters. And again, this movie does a great job at making the monsters feel like normal fucking guys, which is something that definitely gets lost as we go down. And I think one of the scariest things about serial killers, you always hear John Wayne Gacy was a nice, normal guy. Ted Bundy, nice, normal guy. Dahmer, nice, normal guy. And then all of a sudden you find out what they did and you're like, what? How can someone pass like that in society for that long? That's what makes them scary.
Now that they put out that monster show about Jeffrey Dahmer, though, I think we're all he was not normal.
That's what I mean. They pass as normal, right? Dahmer had a job. Everyone's he was a nice, quiet spoken guy. Not a big deal. Maybe a little off, but not you read My Friend Dahmer, the graphic novel. They're he was a goofball in school, clearly a weird guy. But how do you go from that to what was found in that apartment? And that the shocking mundanity of these guys, who then you open their doors and you're like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
That's what this movie does so well. And I think Will Graham, to that point, he's, fucking Braun and Knuckles cop first. And he feels very real to me, too. Because this was also at an age where, like, the people in Atlanta are like, I know how to catch a thief. I know the motive. I know this. I have no idea what this guy. And when he's like, it's in his dreams, you see the other cops like, is this guy on payroll? Like, what is this?
Nerd, whatever.
Yeah, what? And so, like, he's at this transition point, right? Like, now we understand that the FBI, it's more about, we've had your Fox Mulders and all these guys where it's like, you can be like just the kind of brain nerd empath guy first, and that's okay, right? So again, I think he is a perfect vessel for us in this version of it, right? I think, again, he's the one you would say is, and honestly, you might say that about all the characters in this movie, short of Farina, that they're all the least interesting versions of the characters now. But I don't think it's a failure of the movie, but a function of the time. So let's go to the Red Dragon's becoming. I fucking love Tom Noonan. Love him. His performance, I think, is brilliant in that it's so understated.
Yeah.
And then his is where you see that kind of like 80s vibe work really well. And then his scenes, I think, is where Michael Mann's flourishes really pay off and expand that there is a separate mindset within this guy. I think he's the one who benefits the most from that in this movie. In a way that Will Graham doesn't. I feel like they nailed the Red Dragon in this movie.
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes down to casting. I think Tom Noonan is just the perfect guy to cast for this. Like, he's perfectly creepy. And perfectly creepy looking, just like by being just quiet. And, I think that, like, when you see him at his, like you were saying, the Dahmers of the world, you go, seem like a nice guy.
Yeah.
When you see him at his job, he seems just quiet and perfectly affable. Like, he doesn't bother anybody. He's doing his job.
That would be your favorite coworker, the guy that just never talks to you and just does his job. You're like, what a fucking A+ dude, that guy.
What a mensch. Love
He's not sending me emails for no fucking reason. He's not inviting me to meetings that don't need to happen. He's just sitting quietly, munching snacks and processing footage. I love that guy.
Love that guy.
He did what? What was that?
Sorry, what?
Did I say I loved him? I mean, we crossed paths.
He was nice to me. I don't know about anybody else.
I had my suspicions, to be honest.
I guess there was that one time he showed up naked and I saw his weird tattoo on the back. That's actually the other Red Dragon. No, I think Tom Noonan does such a good job of making it it's not presentational. I think that's like the main thing, and that's the key difference between this and the Ralph Fiennes version. Because, if you're going to hire Ralph Fiennes, hey, let him do the thing. Like,
Yes.
That's why you hire the man. I think Tom Noonan does this so that it is like the perfect dichotomy between him and Will Graham. Like, when it's this understated sort of thing and you have this sort of theatrical FBI profiler almost, you're like, Jesus Christ, guy, tone it down. And then you have this sort of understated serial killer who has like theatricality and essentially like what he's doing, but not like this. It's one of those things where, again, you're like, that guy could blend. Mm-hmm. I think the Ralph Fiennes character in the other one, you're like, that guy probably has trouble blending in. Like,
you would immediately peg him as like,
you'd be like,
ooh, I don't want to be caught in the break room with that guy.
Yeah.
Like, he's fucking lifting weights. He's all like, he's like a hard cock the whole movie, right? Just bulging and ready to attack everything. Tom Noonan, and again, I think the scene that I think about with this movie a lot, as I mentioned before, is that first Freddie Lounge scene. And it's one of those now, like, looking back from the movies we've seen, that first reveal when Freddie Lounge sees him, he's like, oh, God, no. I just laughed. Like, I feel bad laughing. So I was like, it's such a pathetic reveal. He's just this guy with this fucking pantyhose face. He's like, do you see? You called me name. And you're like, what a fucking loser. Like, what an absolute loser. He thinks he's cool. Look at this motherfucker with the bad Hot Topic, not even Hot Topic, kiosk in the mall shirt with the fucking pantyhose on his face. He just looks sad and pitiful and small.
That one is, again, that one is so much. Maybe it's because South Park spoofed it.
Yeah.
That one's so much better than like this Freddie Lounge scene's better than the other one because maybe it's because I just laugh every time.
Well, the other one, yeah, it has Philip Seymour Hoffman and Ray Fiennes. I get
who's
it.
Great. But it's like, again,
it's a movie scene.
You see those two actors, you're like, these are two really good actors doing a scene in a movie. You're like, but I also know their names and other things they've done.
Yeah, again, as I said, he looks small and pathetic and pitiful. That's not an insult to Tom Noonan or his performance. No. I think that's a benefit, right? He is not, when you look at Ray Fiennes in that movie, you're like, yeah, he is becoming something terrible. This guy is just this broken psyche of, I want to be someone who is desired and wanted and feared and respected. I want people worshiping at the feet of the Red Dragon, like the William Blake painting, right?
Yeah.
But it looks so sad and lame, and this is the key. It looks so real and human, right? We don't just get to decide because we're damaged, I want to be a dragon, and that happens. That's not life. Watching the kind of pitiful wish fulfillment and creation of his mythology, I think is a benefit to the movie. I like that bit a lot, despite my laughing at it. But I think that's the key, is that these guys are laughable, imperfect monsters. I don't think it makes it
bad that I'm laughing. I think it's that.
Also, if I was tied to that chair, I would not be laughing.
No, obviously I'd be in a different situation if I was tied to the chair. I think that you're just watching something so profoundly. It's so profoundly weird that, again, like it's like nervous laughter. My kid does it, I do it. Like, you just like, I'm uncomfortable, so I'm going to laugh. It doesn't make it any less troubling.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. The scenes of so he brings the lady home. He's watching his next fucking victim's assignment, and she can't see it because she's blind, right? And when she grabs him and kiss, there's like a real shocked, losery, oh fuck, no one would ever kiss me. I've never been kissed. There's an energy to that, right? Him laying in bed with her and weeping. That's where Tom Noonan soars to me, is bringing out these very vulnerable and pitiful parts of the character. And then it's punctuated by scenes like when he's outside of the van, he wants to see this girl, right? They go see a tiger and he's all fucking puffed up. He's like, oh yeah. He bangs this lady and he's feeling it, right? Mm-hmm. And then this guy just brings her home and he sees them together and he has this whole fucking stylized needle drop moment where I think the song is just I'm so strong, but this is a lot. And it's this cheesy fucking horrible 80s ballad.
These needle drops are
that is fucking hysterical.
Yeah.
But again, a lot of people, go on TikTok. There are so many dudes who are just discovering filters, with divorced dad energy. And it's you unleash the beast, and it's them with fire graphics and shit behind them, looking tough with their little pork bellies hanging out of their shirts and shit. And you're but they are writing a story about how they think we're gonna see that on TikTok. And be this guy's cool. I got to get his dick in me however I can, as fast and as much and often as possible. That's what he's doing, and it works. And he rips the dashboard off, and then he kills Freddie Lounge. And when he knocks on the door, she's like, "Francis, what's up?" And he's like, "There is no more There will never be Francis again."
Yeah.
And you're left as an audience to say, is there a world where this guy just has this blind lady and dates her, and that covers it up? And then we get a Dennis Rader BTK thing where he could form a normal enough life to have long gaps between red dragoning. And that's something that the other movie doesn't give you because the monster's too baked into what's happening. And I think that scene in particular in the van, it's just Michael Mann and Tom Noonan found the right fucking dials to turn for me on that.
Agreed. They figured it out. It was good.
So we kind of have these flourishes, right? I love the FBI procedural shit. It's really working. Again, what this movie people go back and find it for is this is our first Hannibal Lecter, right? Hannibal Lecter is the one. In comparing Will Graham meeting Lecter in this one to the Silence of the Lambs scene for the first time is utterly fascinating. I've been watching those two scenes a lot since we did this, right? Let's just start here. What Anthony Hopkins did is incredible. He won the Academy Award for it, even though he's in the movie for something like 8 to 13 minutes, like a really small but like insanely impactful turn is Hannibal Lecter. Again, there's no human left in that Hannibal Lecter. Brian Cox just feels like a real guy. Yeah. And it's hard to go back and judge these performances without, because I'm sure there's someone listening to this who's like, all you guys are doing is comparing it to the other movies. I think that's how everyone who's finding... I think
that's how most people do this.
People are going to find this because they're going back from the other movies, I'm imagining. In this year, the year of our gods, 2025. I think
there's a lot of people that don't realize Brian Cox was the first Hannibal Lecter on screen. So
yeah, and it's such a weird performance because on paper, Brian Cox and Anthony Hopkins are like, all right, British guys, a lot of air of like respectability and prestige and power. Great at delivering soliloquies. There is just a magic that doesn't exist in Brian Cox's Hannibal Lecter. But again, I think it's the whole thing. The set is understated. Will Graham is more understated. Him as the monster, he just feels more like a real guy. Yeah. Which is what I keep coming back to in the movie. That I wonder if audiences ding it for that. I think it's the greatest strength. Brian Cox just feels like a normal guy. It's hard to imagine Brian Cox as Hannibal Lecter in any scene in Silence of the Lambs, or especially any scene in Hannibal. By the time we're to Mads Mikkelsen, you're like, this is like a fully formed, like, operatic villain, right?
Yeah.
Who has these erudite ways, right? He's very fancy and elegant. Brian Cox, it looks like his job could have been mechanic if they didn't keep calling him Dr. Hannibal Lecter.
Yeah. Well, I think that's, again, the presentation of Hannibal Lecter between like this and Silence of the Lambs, I mean, could not be more different.
Just this right when they walk in, right? Brian Cox is just kind of chilling. Anthony Hopkins is already like eyes bulging, like, standing in the middle of the room, like ready to greet his audience, like it's a one-man show. Brian Cox is like, "Oh, what's up, motherfucker?
Oh, what's up, bro? Remember that time I almost killed you?
Yeah.
That was
fucking me. Bitch. Think you're so cool?
Bitch.
Right.
Think you're so cool.
Like from the moment you see it, the flat, white, tiny room, right? Him laying on the bed. He is not this, like, prepared for war kind of guy. And as the scene goes on, you're like, you're still getting those Hannibal Lecterisms.
Yeah. Well, I think what's interesting, too, is, like, so I watched this. So, because, like, it's interesting because now we have 3 versions of this scene, actually. So it's this one, the one from Red Dragon, and the one from the Hannibal show. The one from the Hannibal show is just so focused on Will Graham's experience because it is supposed to be like, because again, we've had 3 seasons.
They're paying off a long run, yeah.
They're paying off a lot of trauma. So you really need to watch the 2 movie versions, and it's fascinating because like the Red Dragon version is very much just in the style of the Silence of the Lambs opener. You're like, got it. And the presentational way of speaking and the way Anthony Hopkins cultivated this character is absolutely fascinating. But like, it's a performance, very much so. I think I go back to what you said. The workman style of this movie goes to also Hannibal Lecter, who literally is just like sitting on his bed, like, oh my god, dude. I think what's more interesting, I think the thing I like the most about it is really. Because they cut this out of the Red Dragon. At least I think they did. There's a thing that this one does and Hannibal does where it's like he asks at the like right before he's about to leave. He was like, "Did you come back here to get the scent?" That's not in the Red Dragon. That's not in Red Dragon. He's like, "Did you come back here to get the scent? Why don't you just smell yourself? Because we're the same person." You're like, "Oh, that's really fascinating." And like in season 3 of Hannibal, that's a payoff. In this one particularly, it is supposed to be this revelatory thing, and you really have to watch it to kind of like get in that headspace. So when you watch that sequence and he goes, "Why don't you just smell yourself? Leave me alone. Like, you caught me. Unfair." Then again, like
he's just like, but coconut oil and Tommy Bahama? Is that what you guys all smell like too?
It really is a fascinating. It is a fascinating performance though, because of again like the characters that we're used to being so theatrical because just where we started watching these things. These are such understated performances, and again, like it feels like I agree with you. It like fully feels just like blue collar serial killer. Who's like, oh my God, fine. Jesus Christ, I'm just trying to like read my books. Leave me alone. Like there is this, it's not like he's been waiting to be seen. He's more just like, oh my God, fine, I'll tell you what I think. Jesus Christ. Will you leave if I tell you what I think?
Yeah, he's more of a like, but then he's not defeated because then we get that great scene of him like calling and he's like, as the kids say, rizzing up the reception. He's like, oh, I'd love it. But again, that scene I love in this because it's reminding us that if you just heard this guy on the phone, you'd be like, all right, just normal ass guy. Of course he's sending books for academics and fucking whatever. I really thought that was good. I love the way they tied it together. To see, you know, him and the Red Dragon, right? The Pilgrim thing. And they're talking to each other and that these monsters understand each other. You're the only one who can see what I'm really becoming, right?
Yeah.
I thought it's still such an effective performance. It's interesting in movie history because it's so rare that the person who comes first just gets erased from history. Unless you're remaking like an old movie, right? Like when they remade The Thing from Another World, none of us remember any of those actors from that. We remember Kurt Russell, right? We remember those kind of guys. Anyone for the rest of the time that plays Indiana Jones, any Harrison Ford movie they've remade, right? Yep. Like your fault. It's so rare that the first performance is this good and feels totally fucking lost to the sands of time. Because it just got fucking annihilated by the guy who came next. Like it's a pretty rare. Like even when Heath Ledger destroyed as the Joker and won an Oscar, we didn't forget about Nicholson.
Yeah, that comparison is so like I don't know what it is about Anthony Hopkins as Hannibal Lecter. That
I mean, it's just dark crackling energy. Like there's something
like it's a full like wax on wax off of Brian Cox's performance where you're just like. Yeah, great. Thanks. Like, it's such a fascinating thing.
Yeah, he just imbued it with magic. Like, whatever the fuck
forgotten
happened.
To the sands of time that this guy did this first, and you're just like, who gives a shit?
And
like,
did it well. Like, it's a good performance.
It was good. It was a good performance. It's good
just
acting.
impossible to watch that and not want to, like, if I just believe hard enough, I'll open my eyes and it'll be Anthony Hopkins in that tiny white room. It's just unfair. Like it is just a sad fucking unfair.
By the way,
reality.
It's so weird. Also, I don't know if you noticed this. Like, because when I was looking at everyone's credits, this is like everybody's third movie, other than like Tom Noonan, like William Petersen, Dennis Farina, Brian Cox, Michael Mann. Like this is like everybody's third movie. It's bizarre.
It's just finding people at the right time. Again, I think it's. Oh, man, I feel bad for Brian Cox. I feel like we should put more respect on this performance. But it's just, you know, Anthony Hopkins came and took it. It's like when I did a video for Slash Film recently where I was like, guys, we're going to recast Freddy Krueger. How do we do it the best? Mm-hmm. And I was like, I'd pick, you know, Walton Goggins, Michael Shannon. Mm-hmm. What's that kid's name? Caleb Landry Jones. I was like, I had some ideas, right?
Yeah.
And a bunch of the comments are just like, no one will ever do it better than Robert Englund. Stop. Just make new movies. And I was like, what a great sentiment that Hollywood's not going to listen to. Freddy Krueger is a cash cow, and we're going to be milking that motherfucker till the day we die. Like, when I die, we will be dead and buried, and the worms will be so happy to have the fattest buffets. They'll still be making Nightmare on Elm Street movies. It's just how it's going to be. Get used to it. And again, someday someone will come along and try to take Robert Englund's spot. And it's just, I can't think of anyone who has so been blown away for doing a great job. Yeah. All right. Let's talk about the ending. This all comes to a head as we get Tom Noonan's reveal. He's going to kill this lady in his house. Will Graham's found him. Mm-hmm. This is where I'm like, I think Will Graham is the lady that doth protest too much. Like, maybe miss me with the, you know, he's like, we'll go as late as I want, pal. Fuck you. You brought me back. Right? He's like screaming at him. He's like, you've seen this one. It's like the big reveal moment, right? Will Graham shows up. Why are you going to that house? Your job is done. You've cracked the case. You've entered the head.
That might have been my favorite moment in the whole movie is him when we'll go as late as we want, pal. I'm like, hey, dude, You're a profiler, okay? You're not
Exactly.
the fucking lead agent.
Exactly.
Relax.
And they're bringing SWAT teams. They're bringing all these guys. Apparently the cops just like can't drive. So they're like, we'll stay here and tend to our wounds. And I was like, those are guys with like, that are like 2 years from a pension. So they intentionally fucking wrecked that car. Like, bummer. Kowalski's got to go to the ER.
Even Jack Crawford is like, hey, we don't have to go. Like, you did your job. Like, everybody.
You remember how last time you almost lost your head? Let's not do that
Will
this time.
Graham. Everybody but Will Graham was like, hey, profiler guy, back up. Like, you are not. But then again.
Yeah. The movie tries to hide it and, like, he has to do this or else that lady's going to die. And I was like, I get it. It's a movie. That's why you cast William Petersen.
Not only that, this is the 80s, and that's not the kind of cop
we got to have our action-y hero moment. But also, Will Graham, you don't get a bitch anymore about how hard your life is. If you're jumping through the window to fight the 6'8" serial killer.
Not only is it like, do we need our action hero moment? It's like, but it's Michael Mann action hero moment. So it's slow-mo running up to the
He's running like
glass
he's
window.
fucking Lancelot in the Holy Grail. It's like, what, you can't shoot through a window, motherfucker? You don't have like gun.
Yeah,
you have a gun.
Not
You must have
shooting
been
a
trained.
gun. You have to jump through the fucking window. I'm like, okay, well, Will Graham's dead from
I love that
massive
he just jumps
lacerations.
into a choke slam and just gets fucking bitch slapped and thrown about the room. I was like, yep, there's that old Will Graham flavor coming.
I do have to ask you about this because this is something I'm like, is this just bad 80s cutting or is this like the style?
Would I rather just have been stabbed than forced to listen to monologues in Inagata Devita? Yes. If I was that blind lady, I'd be like, kill me! God, I can't take another 20 minutes.
Please turn this
that song's
shitty
like
music
28
down.
minutes long, yeah. Good God.
I
get it. You have a Radio Shack near your house. Enough.
I don't know if you noticed this, but it was something that I like. It's very choppy editing.
Yeah.
And I don't
frantic.
know if that's intentional. Yeah, well, like
I think
sometimes
it's intentional. Yeah.
Sometimes it seems frantic. Other times it seems like they did not get the effect, and they had to like cut. Like, there's one part particularly. It's like it's sort of just it's the same thing that happens actually in Primal Fear with William Petersen as well, where William Petersen's on the phone. He's talking to, I think he's on the phone with Wahlberg, and he's talking, and then they cut to the same scene, like from another take. And that's sort of like twice it felt a little bit like that. The other times, like frenetic pacing, like, yeah, it's fine, I don't care about that. But a couple of times I'm like, ooh, did a squib not go off or something? And we just have to like redo this.
I think Michael Mann just can't stand the stillness of a shot. And I'm sure people could pull up tons of scenes that would prove me wrong. But it feels like he's like, this is the moment. We got to have energy. Will Graham's going to be running at this window for 28 seconds in a row.
Dude.
We can't have another 6 seconds without a cut the rest of the thing. Because Tom Noonan's just grabbing his shotgun. He's blowing out lights and shit. It's cool. He wastes a bunch of cops, proving again that Kowalski was smart for fucking hitting that ditch and not running up to the serial killer house. And Will Graham wastes him, right? And they have this kind of like, he's an easy lover. Like, Will Graham and Jack Crawford are just out on the dock at this beautiful, golden hour.
God, the music.
It's cool. It's a nice payoff. But my point with this finale is Will Graham is a dramatic bitch who fucking loves all of this. Freddie Lounds would have been his favorite person on earth for helping him write this narrative of the put upon fucking genius. Will Graham is full of shit in this movie. The ending of this movie proves to me that this Will Graham is the most... You think Will Dancy is fucking barrel rolling through a window to try to throw hands with the serial killer? Fuck off. That part really, I was like, Will Graham is fucking lying to himself. Will Graham is lying to himself and his wife when he's like, I'm not getting too deep, I promise. And it's like, yeah, is the moment you penetrated that window, your ruse is exposed, sir. No one believes you ever again.
No one will ever believe that you're done working again. You've jumped through a plate glass window and shot a guy 6 times. Like, you are. Yeah, you're that guy.
You're pretty hard, aren't you, pal? I don't have to be an empath and walk in your shoes to know that you're rock hard about what you've just done.
Yeah.
Pretty proud of yourself, pal.
Like, the next time you make love to your wife, you're going to put on that fucking song like it's Sleeping with the Enemy, and everyone's going to be like, weird.
He's going to play the Stone Cold theme song with the glass break the moment he penetrates. Ah! I remember. All right, Alex, what's the most Sorry, I'm going to choke to death laughing. Alex, what's the most messed up moment in Manhunter?
Okay, I've been thinking about this. I don't think there's okay, here's the thing. I don't think there's a messed up moment. I think what's messed up overall in this movie is the unmotivated lighting I see literally everywhere throughout the film.
You think the gaffer's really going after your psyche? There you go.
There's at least 3 instances where it's like, where's that green neon light coming from?
Why is this bedroom so fucking blue?
I was just like, what's going on here? That is legitimately like, I'm like, that's the only real messed up, because like it's a movie about a serial killer, and yet, you know, I mean, I'd say like actual messed up moment is him just like screaming "son of a bitch" a lot.
So if I had to pick the most messed up moment in Manhunter, I think it's got to be like, it's kind of a scene that transitions into another, because again, it is pretty subdued for a serial killer story as we know them now. I would say it's Freddie Lounds, like when we see him in his pantyhose, that kind of pitiful reveal, and Freddie Lounds like, I'll tell the truth, just let me go, man. And he goes, let's seal your promise with a kiss. And he puts his teeth in and he goes in for the kiss, and we cut outside of the house and just hear, ah! And we're left to just imagine what that looks like. The next thing we see is a security guard just trying to do like a Sudoku or whatever. And he's like, huh? What's that creaky sound? He sees nothing. He looks back. And all of a sudden, Freddie Lounds, strapped into a wheelchair, comes barreling down the fucking parking garage ramp, just flooring it, right, from gravity and velocity, completely on fire. Seeing the paparazzi reporter fully ablaze, rolling into a parking garage, I was like, that's a big movie image right there.
That's a good movie.
That's fucked up. You made out with him, you bit his face up, and then you burn him on fire and rolled him down a hill. That's pretty messed up.
Fair.
That's it for Manhunter. I hope you guys are having as much fun with this March Madness curation, the sweaty madman.
Sweaty, you know what I mean?
Just sweat. This is a sweaty ass movie, dude. Even William Petersen just running down all those fucking. There's a lot of him running a lot and just being sweaty and needing to like undo the button real quick. I hope you're enjoying this curation as much as we are. We'll see you next week, or no, Friday. We'll see you for a filmmaker interview. We got lots of stuff. You guys know the schedule. New Movie Monday, The Abyss Wednesday, Filmmaker Fridays. Hope you're enjoying it. Go to the Messed Up Movies Podcast Patreon to support the show and get exclusives, get our Black Mirror miniseries. Lots of fun stuff over there. We have a great community we'd love you to be a part of. Subscribe to the Misfit Parade YouTube channel to see videos, content, all that good stuff. Subscribe to the Misfit Parade newsletter, Parade Route, on misfitparade.com. Keep up with Mr. Cream Jeans Hidey Hole as we're in production on that. We're on all the socials, 5-star ratings and reviews. Please, God, let a friend know. Do you see? Do you see what will happen if you don't? Do you see?
Do you see? Do you see? Don't say it like Ray Fiennes. Do it like Tom. Do you see?
You don't want to see. Let's put it that way. Let a friend know what we're doing.